Here's a question about Avatar the Last Airbender. If you had to guess, would you say Avatar was more influenced by the Dungeons & Dragons books or by Bruce Lee movies? More influenced by the Elder Scrolls series or by the House of Flying Daggers? It's hard to guess, right? It feels like the authors of the show had one foot in fantasy and the other one in martial arts. And instead of explaining the nitty-gritty details of both, they relied on our previous knowledge. They trusted their audience. They trusted we'd know the very basics of sorcery and kung fu tropes. So they could focus on the interactions of those tropes, the fascinating combinations between them. Today we're going to explore that reliance on your audience's cultural baggage and how to use it in your favor. World building and writing are not skills that you can improve by just reading or watching or playing. You must try your hand, you must create. And that's the whole point of this series here, the Worldbuilding Tower. Together we explore amazing narratives, and from them we extract powerful lessons that then I turn into an exercise that any creator can try. And together we grow as artists and as a community of world builders. Today we're going to explore a particular technique that they use in the writing of Avatar the Last Airbender. But before we go there, let me introduce you to a term that I found out when I was actually studying game design: piggybacking. I was first introduced to the concept of piggybacking when I was listening to a podcast by Mark Rosewater, Magic the Gathering's lead creative designer. The idea is simple but powerful. As a creator, you know your audience comes to your art with their own cultural baggage. But there's a lot of that baggage that's predictable, and you can use that to your advantage. Magic the Gathering occasionally creates their own unique creatures, but most of the time, their world buildings use well-known tropes. Why would that be a good decision? I mean, they have this wonderful creative team. Why not be original every single time? Well, when you introduce novel concepts, you ask for more bandwidth from your audience. They have to learn to pay more attention. Novelty increases complexity. And according to Mr. Rosewater himself, quote, "There really is a bunch of positive things complexity can do for a game. The problem is, the other side has a very compelling argument. It's the greatest force capable of killing your game." End quote. Same goes for any story. An overcomplicated narrative requires so much from your audience that they might give up before they get any value out of it. On the other hand, if you piggyback, you can use your audience's preconceptions to save energy. Here's a practical example. When Magic was visiting the plane of Ixalan for the first time, we were introduced to the Legion of Dusk, a faction that combines two tropes: the vampire and the Spanish conquistador. By relying on the fact that players would have some idea about those two tropes, Magic could focus not on the very basic elements of those, but how the elements interact. So when you read about a religious practice around fasting that sometimes sends vampires into a crazed blood rage, you're ready for that. You know vampires, you know they drink blood. You know the European invasion of the Americas, you know how motivated by religion they were, many times unreasonably. So you're ready for the really interesting synergies. Which brings me to Avatar. Here the writers used a similar process. They used the trope of the elemental wizard, the most recognizable of all wizard tropes. And they combined it with many different martial arts movie tropes. Movie tropes, yes, not actual martial arts tropes, but movie tropes. Piggybacking is not about being concise with reality. It is about making good use of your audience's cultural baggage, whatever it is. If you compare the number of people who had significant martial arts experience with the number of people who happen to watch a couple of martial arts movies, you will find that the latter is more numerous. Most real-life senseis are pretty chill people, but when you go to kung fu movies, they're harsh, like in Kill Bill. They're quirky, like in The Drunken Master. They're intense, like in Hero. They're emotional, like in Enter the Dragon. Even if you've never watched any of those movies, it doesn't make a difference. They're part of a long tradition on how to depict martial arts. They are part of a symbolic construct in our collective unconsciousness. And those images stay with you. You remember them. So what do you find in Avatar? Master Paco is harsh and stubborn. King Bumi is quirky and weird. Lord Ozai is intense and overflowing with power. The monk Gyatso was a master of kindness as much as airbending. You knew all of those tropes way before you watched Avatar. Once the theme of martial arts was established, there was a part of your brain that was expecting them. And because of that, some energy, some processing power was spared, and you had more energy to concentrate on what really makes this world building shine, which is the interaction of the martial arts tropes with the elemental magic ones. You know the trope of the hidden monastery, where the monks train their skills high up in the mountains. You've seen it even in Batman. But combining that with air magic, we get monasteries that are beyond isolated. You can only get there flying. You know the trope of animal-inspired movements or styles, like the praying mantis style or the crane kick. So in Avatar, they combine that with magical elemental beasts that are the ultimate nature teachers. Even the trope of the blind warrior is quite known, from Zatoichi to Daredevil. But Toph pushes that trope forward by relying on her earthbending to interact with the world, rather than her hearing, like most martial artist characters. Those interactions play with our preconceptions. We don't need to study Avatar or pay that much attention, and yet it delivers a lot of fun very efficiently. Lovely! So now, let's apply that. To practice that same kind of piggybacking that we saw both in Magic the Gathering and Avatar, we're first gonna need 2 tropes. And I'm gonna ask you to do just like those examples and mix one fantasy trope with a non-fantasy trope. Just like our references, let's combine different symbolic universes. Let's create unique interactions. But before we combine them, let's practice piggybacking. Let's list the preconceptions we're sure our audience will have about those tropes. Not the complicated stuff. I'm talking about relying on the fact that your audience will know that angels can fly and that volcanoes might erupt at any time. The very basics. With those 2 lists of preconceptions at hand, we're gonna look around, see which items spark our curiosity, our creativity, and from those, we're gonna start our mixing. We're going to create a novel interaction, but one that it's not going to spend a lot of our audience's brain power, exactly because we stopped it from those listed items that we're positive they already knew. And with that, we go to the last part of this video, my take on this exercise. Not the better answer, not the correct answer, just one possible answer, one stepping stone in my journey to become a better writer, a better world builder. And I encourage you to also write yours in the comments below. There's a lot of people sharing amazing worlds. Without further ado, let's go. Here's my 2 tropes: dragons and TV game shows. One very magical and one utterly not. Let's start with the dragons. We're gonna be certain that the audience will already know about them. They spit fire, they fly, they have armored scales, they hoard treasures. they kidnap princesses, they're challenged by knights. There's more I could add here, but I think that's enough for the very foundation of the dragon. Those tropes have been around for centuries, way before any Dungeons and Dragons. Now let's do the same with game shows. They involve a competition with game rules. They have a grand prize. There's a host introducing the activities. There's a live audience. Okay, that should be enough as well. I immediately see the hoarding treasure seems synergistic with the grand prize, so I'm gonna pick those up. And to add some spice to the mix, I'm also going to add the kidnapping and the competition with games. In this world, exceptional people try their best to hide their talents. If you're smart, you're going to act dumb. If you're strong, you're going to choose clothes that sort of hide your physique. Why? Because sometimes the dragons are swooping by and everybody knows what they're after. Gold and people, but not any kind of people. The smartest, the strongest, the virtuosos, the diplomats, the acrobats, the people who excel. They take those people by force and most of them are gone for good. But sometimes a confused and bruised and traumatized kidnappee comes back to town with a huge pile of gold, enough gold to sustain generations. These people, what tales do they bring along with their treasure? You see, in this world, dragons are as self-centered as ever. But you know what they're after? Fun. They want amusement. And how do they do it? They organize a gauntlet. 8 different dragons get together. The first 4, they depart in different cardinal directions with the intention of collecting the best humans they can possibly find, and also some gold along the way. The 4 remaining dragons are tasked with creating a series of intricate challenges, and those challenges must be varied. We want to test the humans in their strength, and intellect, and dexterity, and willpower. When the kidnappers are back, bringing 20 interesting people to compete, then the fun begins. Most of them die, horribly, gruesomely. That's half of the fun for the dragons. But honestly, dragonkind can get very invested in games. They start to cheer for one promising person or another. And at the end, of course, only one person remains. And if you win one of those competitions, you will see some of the dragons roaring in delight. Yes, they were thinking about murdering you at the beginning, but that's past. Now they're really rooting for you. So as this practice evolved among dragons, they also decided to add some sort of a prize at the end for the winner. Noticing that humans seem to value gold above all else, the dragons started to, just casually stealing entire treasuries here and there, as they looked for the candidate as a side quest, just so they could give a little symbolic piece, a little medal for the winner of the competition. A little something, just a fortune to rival the king. I'm sure I could fit a dragon host there somewhere, maybe something about knights with lances, but honestly, folks, that's my time for today. I gotta go. So that's the end of this episode. I hope it was useful. I really, sincerely hope I will see your exercise in the comments below. It's been so great to see so many exercises from people all around the world. It's beautiful. And as always, a special thank you to my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me. This is a tiny channel. Oh, it's so great to have patrons, to have people who trust that much in me. Thank you. And with that, I leave you for today and see you next time. Ciao.